Become a member of the 660 Club and listen to archives of your favorite shows online.
It will be found an unjust and unwise jealousy to deprive a man of his natural liberty upon the supposition he may abuse it. George Washington.
They who would give up an essential liberty for temporary security deserve neither liberty or security. Benjamin Franklin.
The Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government, lest it come to dominate our lives and interests. Patrick Henry.
America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it would be because we destroyed ourselves. Abraham Lincoln.
I predict future happiness for Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them. Thomas Jefferson.
Property is surely a right of mankind as real as liberty. John Adams.
The Constitution is a guide which I never will abandon. George Washington.
Welcome to the first hour, actually today the only hour of Patriots Lament. We call it the Saturday morning wake-up call. And in the studio, as always, from Bighorn Enterprises, we have Josh Bennett. Good morning, Mr. Bennett.
Good morning.
I am Steve Floyd, the man with the face made for radio, kind of the paid monkey here. I'm just the chimpanzee pushing buttons. And sometimes I'll occasionally push a random button just to see what happens. Josh, you have a special guest today. Would you care to introduce him?
Yes, we do. We have today an original freedom fighter, a true American radical. He's been fighting for jury nullification. He's been fighting against the black-robed tyrants in the so-called justice system. He's a man who's not afraid to speak his mind. He's not afraid to go toe-to-toe against the state. You've seen him carrying a hangman's noose on TV. You've seen him, well, I've personally seen him wearing a prisoner's outfit protesting the National Defense Authorization Act. He's our good friend, Frank Turney. Frank, I just have one question real quick for you. Do you hate the state?
I hate the state, but I love my country.
Don't want to be an American idiot. Don't want a nation under the new media. And can you hear the sound of hysteria? The subliminal mind, America.
With a very apropos introduction, ladies and gentlemen, Frank Turney.
How you doing, Frank?
Good morning.
All right, where are we going with this today, Josh? Do you have Frank here just to rub the noses of the judges in it, or?
Oh, just about anyone. Frank will rub their nose in it. You know, I've met Frank probably 4, maybe 5 years ago. And before I met him, I'd heard from several people, you know, or read about him, heard about him, you know, the crazy Uncle Frank is kind of the demeanor that I heard several times. Oh, stay away from that guy. He's just a pothead. Oh, he's just wanting to. And so I didn't really care. So I was like, who is this guy? And I got to meet him, got to know him, got to see him in action several times. And I love this guy. I mean, he is not afraid to go toe-to-toe against the state. He'll go toe-to-toe with a judge. He'll go toe-to-toe with a cop. He'll go toe-to-toe with anyone. A politician, he'll go toe-to-toe with just your average Joe Blow and tell him the truth. And he doesn't do it for Frank Turney. He does it because he has a heart. I really believe this. He has a heart for America. He has a heart for people. This guy actually has a heart for people that are thrown in jail for stupid state made-up reasons. And I mean, we talk about all the time people that are thrown in jail, their lives are ruined, their families' lives are ruined forever over stupid things because the state decides so. And Frank's been there fighting them. Anytime we've had a caller call in with some hardships or going through troubles in jail or whatever, Frank calls in right after and says, give him my number. I'll go down there. I'll be there. What do you need me to do? When we were at the Republican National Puke Convention, or not the National, the State Convention, that was puke too. Frank Turney stood up with a big sign, stop sign that says NDAA, and he's wearing his jailer's costume, a prisoner's costume, and he stood right up in front of all of those people and said, stop the NDAA. That took guts. So I wanted to have Frank on today.
Okay, I appreciate being on Patriots Lament. I'll probably take a few minutes to talk about probably the most controversial issue today is the IRS.
Yeah.
And as you know, presidential candidate Ron Paul's been asking the IRS to be fully audited, and I don't believe it has been today. I'd like to see a grand jury probe and a special prosecutor, an independent prosecutor, investigate the IRS today. I was out in front of the courthouse here for a particular reason. It was the seizing of the property of Rita and Don Himes. I don't believe there was any real check and balances, any due process regarding seizing their property. And I was out front wearing my usual garb. Thanks to Elder Liberty Liebert, it's passed on now. He made me a hangman's noose a number of years ago, and I've used it in front of the old courthouse, burning a judge's robe. And the other time I used it in front of City Hall, hanging city government. I hate the state. Anyway, and the other day I was in front of the state courthouse wearing my garb. Of course, I had my hangman's noose, my judge's robe, and my little red devil, and hanging the IRS. I had one of the U.S. Marshals or one of the IRS agents come out and on the sidewalk and ask me if I had a permit. And the only thing I could think of, the Constitution's my permit. And I said to him, I think that I'd like to continue protesting. You should go on back in the building before I call my lawyer. And I grabbed my cell phone and he left. But what I heard later from information from the people inside, a jury rights activist, another one, Victor Bruberg, was targeted inside by one of the U.S. Marshals for staring. Staring, can you imagine that?
He intimidated the armed agent. With his eyeballs. The agent has a gun. The agent has all the power of the state behind him to put you in a cage, and he felt intimidated by the eyeballs of this other person.
And so right away, the agent was taking pictures of Mr. Buberge, and so he took a picture back at him, and thanks to Marie Renzel, she's like a little pit bull right in their faces, so... Not only that, there was another man that came out there, and he was taking pictures, and the agents come up and asked him, what's your name? He told them that's none of your business. And so he left the scene, the courthouse. So anyway, that's one of my experiences. I think I do mainly thing for causes is conscious awareness on subject matters, and over the years, when I think it's necessary and justified, not just for myself, for everybody. So I know I remember going down to the convention, the National Defense Authorization Act, and I don't think we're done with that yet.
No.
And that's something that really scares me. There's no real due process and right to trial by jury. And that's another one.
Let's go to that one real quick, Frank, because one of the things I've appreciated about you a lot is the way you've gone out and opened people's eyes, or tried to at least. And for some reason, especially I don't understand the people being against this. I can understand the state and judges and lawyers fighting it and everything, but why people, the American people, would be so against this, the strongest avenue of recourse that we have, and that's trial by jury and jury nullification, which you've called in several times, and we've talked about ad nauseum over and over how history, we had freedoms in the past, and the little bit of freedoms we have today, we can look directly back in history and see it's from jury nullification, from the right to religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom to not have some jerk-off kick your door down and come in without a warrant. All those things have been from the jury.
Exactly.
And I don't know if you probably don't even need that paper.
Well, you can go ahead and share
glasses,
it. I appreciate it. I don't have my glasses with me right now,
We'll
so I appreciate that.
I'm just going to throw a little history of the jury here and then ask Frank to take it over. The history of the jury, and this is just a few of the things here. English and American juries were routinely told about the power to refuse to apply the law. This is something that's historical. The judges themselves would instruct the jury, you don't have to listen to me. You don't have to follow the law.
Carta.
Right. That was one of the reasons they fought. The king was the right to trial by jury. The freedom of speech, religion, and peaceable assembly were established by the jury acquittal of William Penn, who was arrested for preaching Quakerism to his congregation in London, 1670. Jury acquittals, 52 in a row, ended the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts.
Wait, how many acquittals in a row?
52 in a row ended the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts colony, 1693. Jury acquittal of John Peter Zenger in 1735, arrested for accurately criticizing New York's colonial government, which gave us the freedom of the press, which I don't understand why the press today is so against it, and they don't even know the only reason they can print this stuff.
Yeah. When I came here in 1982, the first thing I did was ask the newsminer to do a story on Peter Zenger, and many of them didn't even know who he was.
Wow.
I said, this is where you got your job.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness was assured for people of all races as juries refused to apply the Fugitive Slave Acts in 1850s until slavery was abolished by the proclamation in 1863. That's something you and I have both heard over and over, where people will say, oh, well, the juries, those were just used to keep slaves into slavery and blah, blah, blah. No.
Exactly the opposite.
That's right.
Juries that
if you harbored a slave, you could be arrested and thrown in jail without any due process.
Without any at all. And then the northern states, the juries were acquitting people that were harboring fugitive slaves. And so eventually that's part of, which that also goes to state nullification when Wisconsin and other states said we won't follow unconstitutional laws, but it came down to individual juries saying no.
And yeah, right now, Oregon, Maryland, Georgia, and Indiana, it spells out in their constitution that the jury has the right to judge the law as well as the facts, plus I believe 24 other states under the free preamble of free speech recognized jury nullification. Just recently, New Hampshire codified jury nullification. So the House and the Senate and the governor signed it, so defense attorney can argue jury nullification and vote in their conscience before the jury.
That's right. There's another one, too, and I think this is interesting. You and I have both talked about this one quite a bit. Juries defended the value of labor and the rights of workers by refusing to enforce laws against striking. They lobbied into place by big business in the late 1800s until those laws were eliminated. This is one that I don't think people understand, is that it used to be unions were illegal. You couldn't strike, you couldn't bargain, you couldn't get together because big corporations were like, "Hey, we don't want these serfs, getting out of
Intimidation,
hand."
beating the hell out, thrown in jail.
You're telling me that a big corporation would actually go and get a law passed to protect them? That never happens, Monsanto.
Right. And though jury nullification, I mean, there's so many people I've talked to, union guys, that don't even know anything about jury nullification, and they don't even realize without the jury, you wouldn't have unions. This isn't the state that gave you the freedom to bargain, gave you the freedom to join a union. It was juries that gave you those freedoms. That you always had those freedoms, but they stood up for those freedoms. Let's go on. Our freedom to consume alcoholic beverages was restored by juries during the 1920s when juries refused to convict people of liquor law violations until prohibition was repealed. And now, you got people out there, well, your goody two-shoes don't like things like that. But the fact of the matter is, it's your right to do that.
That's right. Look at the marijuana law today. Back there, it's just coming all back. I mean, people are jailed and fined for nonviolent offenses.
Yeah. How many, I don't know what the exact number, you might, how many people do they assume, or percentage-wise, they think that are in jail for marijuana possession laws?
Oh, well, I don't know what the number is. It's an enormous number. Not only that, if you look at our federal prisons today, most of them are nonviolent for drug offenses.
Right here in Alaska, the majority of people in prison are in prison for drug offenses. Not for violence,
right, exactly,
but for drugs.
I think it's, this is for all nonviolent offenses. It's 91% of everyone in jail in America are for nonviolent state offenses, basically political prisoners.
If you could share that with in Sparks versus Hansen 1895 regarding jury nullification, it's very interesting.
In 1895, the Supreme Court refused to remand a murder case, Sparf and Hansen versus U.S., appealed to them because the jury had not been fully informed of its rights, saying they shouldn't have to be told. The court thus acknowledged the right of jury nullification, but left it to judges to decide whether the juries would be so informed. Since then, judges have gone beyond staying mum. They typically tell juries to convict if the evidence supports a conviction, whether or not you approve the law. And that goes back, when we go, we like to talk about original intent here, the original intent of the Constitution, intent of the framers, and we're more of the Jeffersonian types, not the Hamiltonians. But if you go back to the original Supreme Court, the very first one, we're always supposed to look back and see, like George Washington. Presidents today, they look back and they say, well, George Washington basically set the standard. The things that he did set the standard for future presidents, because he was the first one. So our first Supreme Court, John Jay was the Supreme Court Justice, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He specifically told the jurors in the original first Supreme Court, you jury
have a right to judge the law,
right to judge the law. That's right. He said, while the judges are presumed to know the law better, you still have the right to judge both the laws and the facts. And if you don't like them, kick them.
Today, there's so much intimidation, like former magistrate Joe Miller, I must say, is a candidate coming up. He makes jurors swear to that oath to not to vote their conscience, to swear to that oath that they'll follow his instructions. Well, if that's the case, if you're only looking at facts in the case, get 12 computers. They can compile facts. That's why we don't have computers, because most jurors have a moral obligation to render a verdict.
And I think right there, Josh, that answers the question that you asked earlier about why people are against the jury rights. It's because they've been so inculcated into thinking that somehow, well, geez, for the next, however long this trial goes, I'm going to be basically, I'm not going to be allowed to think. Right. For the next 3 weeks, for the next 6 months, however long I'm on this jury, I'm going to be treated like a child. I'm not going to be allowed to make any decisions for myself. For the next 3 weeks or 6 months or however long this trial goes, I'm going to be a tool of the prosecution and the defense and the judge, and I'm not going to get an opportunity to engage my own thinking process at all. And people don't like that, and that's why people don't like to serve on juries in the first place.
Yep.
Yeah, judges
I have never been allowed to serve on a jury, because every time I get in there in the questioning process and they realize that I am not going to be bullied into their position, and I'm not going to be swayed by their emotional appeals, neither side wants me.
Yeah, judges and prosecutors rather have sheep along there than people question authority. They don't want anybody question authority.
That's right. And I think what we read here, the 1895 case, is important because they did say that they shouldn't have to be told. You should already know. That's right. They were saying you have the right, jury.
That's why I have to give credit. There's only one man that stands out there, and 3 different times Senator John Coggill's introduced jury nullification. In fact, he's the chairman of the Senate now, and he's going to introduce it next year. One thing he brought out I liked. He said judges use discretion, prosecutors use discretion, police uses discretion, parole and probation uses discretion. Jurors should be able to use discretion when it comes to jury nullification and rendering a verdict.
Yep.
Yeah, if I may, the last time that I came that close, just a frog hair away from serving on a jury. I was actually in the second round of the selection process, and they began to give us some of the details of the case. And in the details of the case, generally speaking, was that there was a man accused of stalking because he sent flowers to an ex-girlfriend.
Wow.
And I told them, you know what, you guys are you're going to have to convince me that this law is worth enforcing. Not just that what he did violated that law. Is this law, you're going to have to convince me that this law is worth anything before you're going to be able to go anywhere. And the prosecutor immediately turned to the judge and said, move to dismiss.
Right. And another thing that's happening, when you're summoned for jury duty and you're on that panel, it's so important that when the judges start questioning you, you want to be questioned right in front of your peers, not taken back in the chamber. And that's what's happening in state and federal court. I think that's definitely wrong.
And it's intimidation.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, you've been in jury trials. I've been to jury trials. You and I have both been in a jury trial behind the bench. And one of the things that the judge and the prosecutor do, their job is to intimidate the juror. And they do. They look down on them. They tell them, you will strike this. You will not listen to that. You'll recuse yourself. You'll do this. You will do this. You will do this. And you will find, according to my interpretation of the law. Well, 99% of the times when you're in there, that you have sometimes broken a state law. The question is that law correct? And should it be enforced? That's the whole point of the jury. It's our fighting mechanism to stop tyranny.
I went to talk to Judge Seekins the other day because he handled a Kodiak judge that got picked up for drunk driving. Evidently, the police didn't pull him over, but he pulled in his driveway and found out he was drinking. Well, he was acquitted. And I told him, well, there's a good sign of jury nullification. I said, well, we should take a serious look at other people that feel they're too drunk to drive. They pull off the side of the road and get in the back seat and sleep, and they still get charged for drunk driving.
Exactly.
Or shot.
Or if a guy makes it at his driveway and passes out, he gets cited and goes to jail.
Now, the guy down in Anchorage was killed for that because that's exactly a month ago?
Yeah.
He was too drunk to drive, so he basically got out of the car, climbed in the back. Some goody two-shoes at Safeway called the police. Police came, harassed the guy. He came out, in a stupor, has a gun with him. They saw the gun and they shot him to death.
A real peace officer, sheriff, would have shook his hand and said, thank you.
For not driving.
That's right.
Thank you for not getting behind the wheel.
Right.
Well, I think you said something that's there's a big difference in what you said, a peace officer. Yeah. We don't have those anymore. We have state law enforcement.
Exactly, yeah. I've been working on a city charter change, and I just got to collect, I don't know, about 1,500 votes in the city to have our chief of police elected by the people of Fairbanks versus being appointed by the mayor and the city council. Something's wrong there, and we've had chief of police since I've been here in '82 leaving a black eye over some controversy.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's, of all the things that you get to quote-unquote vote for, how come you don't get to vote for who's your law enforcement in town, who's in charge? There's no retribution to that person. There's nothing. He can do whatever he wants, and just as long as he's buddies with the mayor or buddies with whoever, then he gets to stay in.
I come from Oregon. I was raised in Oregon. Of course, there's always problems with our judicial system and police, but we elect our sheriffs in Beaver County. We elect the attorney general. We elect the judges. Not here. It's completely backwards. We make them accountable, responsible to the people. And I've seen many sheriffs being voted out.
Yeah. But you see, Frank, the people here in Alaska, we can't be trusted. We can't be trusted to make
That's
our
why
own
I hate the state.
We have to have somebody take care of us, Frank. We have to have somebody who's smarter than us tell us what to do.
I'd like to share this and back up. I never graduated Harvard or the University of Fairbanks. I graduated in Oregon School of Hard Knocks, and I'm still learning. I did time when I was younger, probably 9 calendars. But afterwards, I questioned authority and raised so much hell while I was in jail that after I got out, I was appointed to the Governor's Task Force in Corrections. I served 3 years in Multnomah County Community Corrections Advisory Committee. The state legislature passed a law that they had to have an ex-felon before you appropriated any money to the community. So I had an opportunity to go back into the jails and prisons and question authority. So that was really something. When they call themselves corrections officers, the first thing I asked, prior to being a corrections officer, you ever corrected anything in the community? No. So I've had a good learning experience there, and I observed the course back there, and I didn't know anything about jury nullification until I come to Fairbanks, and I've been involved with the Fully Informed Jury Association. My gosh, going on probably 18, 19 years now, and thanks to Elio Jones and many of them that informed and educated me, that's for sure.
Yeah. Coming up on the break here in the half hour, Frank, I'd like you to give the 1-800 number and the website for the jury nullification.
That's 1-800-TELL-JURY. That's 1-800-TELL-JURY, or you can just Google Fully Informed Jury Association, FIJA.org, FIJA.org.
That's the Fully Informed Jury Association, and once again, that's 1-800-TELLJURY.
Yeah. And that's a national organization.
You've got it on Patriots Lament right here on KFAR. Back after the Fox News with more Frank Turney right here on Local Talk Radio KFAR.
And I hate the state.
Fair, balanced, Fox. Now on KFAR.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. More dangerous weather in store for the nation's midsection just days after twisters ripped through northern Texas.
That storm is now across parts of the southeast, and in fact, very heavy rain is falling, and the areas around Talladega have seen 4 to 6 inches of rain overnight, and that's causing flash flooding.
Fox meteorologist Rick Reichmuth, the Boston Police Commissioner, says there will be 2 separate investigations to review the response to the marathon bombing last month, and the condemnation coming from both sides of the aisle during a House committee hearing on the IRS scandal. There is disagreement, though.
Whether they were politically motivated or just poorly thought out. And while Republicans accused the administration of targeting political foes, the outgoing IRS commissioner denied that. And the Treasury Department's Inspector General says his investigation didn't find political motives.
Fox's Wendell Goller, Senate Finance and Oversight Committees holding their hearings on the IRS next week. Fox News, we report, you decide.
When you need to know, turn to the news leader. Fairbanks is listening. Local Talk Radio, 660 AM.
Welcome back to Patriots Lament. It's actually, technically, this is hour 1 in Patriots Lament, but today it's the only hour because at 10 o'clock, the airwaves get taken over on not just this, but 3 stations here to do an on-air auction. It'll be a lot of fun for some people.
That's a great big capitalist thing for the station.
Absolutely. Hallelujah, man. We're talking about gobs and gobs and gobs of stuff for cheap. All right, Frank, I got to ask you this. Where do we go from here? Because, it seems to me like most of the people I know do not like serving on a jury. They look for ways to get out of jury duty to the point where, now, I understand now in this town, all they have to do is say, hey, I know Frank Turney.
Right.
And they'll get kicked out of the pool before they even get a chance to get selected.
Or they belong to the Fully Informed Jury Association, eliminated. Well, I think you have to start informing and educating people from grade schools, high schools, civic organizations about the importance of protecting your freedom and liberty, and most about bad laws or unconstitutional laws that come forward. And believe me, there is a lot of them out there. Mostly, I think when there's no victim, there's no crime. Basically.
That is absolutely right.
Right.
But then what do you do with that phrase, victimless crime? I mean, you'd have to stop using that phrase entirely because if there is no victim, there is no crime. You can't say victimless crime because that would be a non sequitur.
Right. Another thing is, I've been observing a court, and I see somebody indicted for second-degree murder, and then all of a sudden he can plea bargain to a manslaughter. I think there's an injustice to that unless there is a self-defense involved or your right to trial by jury. But there was a case here coming up in court that 2-year-old boy was ended up dying. His father beat him because he wet his pants. I mean, after I listened to the district attorney and he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, he beat the boy in the head, threw him in the bathtub, and then tossed him across the room. Well, I'm sitting there in a courtroom, and Judge Blankenship's there, and I got my microphone, and I just couldn't help it. It was like a primal scream. I said, "You baby-killing bastard. You should never walk the prison yard." Well, and then I said, well, I got to get the hell out of here. But these type of injustices in the courtroom is, to plea bargain, and admit what you're doing. Something's wrong right there. Definitely. There's no injustice to these plea bargains. In fact, used to be against the law.
But what can we do, Frank? Because, I mean, everybody wants their own freedoms, and nobody wants to stand up for the freedoms of others. Nobody wants to go out and take some of their time or some of their energy and put their own reputation on the line and go out and make a nuisance of themselves and stand up for somebody else's freedom, but they don't want their own freedoms taken away.
Well, myself personally, I think maybe the Lord above gave me that right to be a messenger for people. So I can just look at myself and try to inform and educate others, hopefully to follow my path somewhere. I'm not going to be here forever.
And people don't understand if your neighbor's not free, you're not free.
Right. The dumbing down of our educational system is just terrible. That's why I see more and more people homeschooling their kids. It's just real bad. They're not teaching the Constitution. One of the reasons I got family members that are going to school, and they talk about the Bill of Rights, but they cannot really discuss the Bill of Rights in the class because of the Second Amendment. Exactly. It's these school teachers.
Yep. One of the things where we were talking about this victimless crimes, one of the crimes in the judiciary system here in America is victimless crimes, because a victimless crime is basically a crime that you commit against the state, and the state hauls you into court and says, he did this. And then the state decides whether you did it or not. So where's the impartiality there? There's no impartiality because they say that you offended them, and then they decide if you're guilty or not.
That's why I hate the state.
Yeah.
I have been attending at the request of family members' health and social services hearing in the court. Wow, you talk about injustice. There is no check and balance of due process. And I know Senator John Coggill, I don't think it went. He had a bill in the hopper that if you're going to remove a child from the home, you should have a trial by jury, not health and social services in the courts. It's all one-sided.
Yeah, no joke. I mean, well, isn't that, we just talked about, it's our right. And it doesn't come from this Bill of Rights. It doesn't come from a Constitution. It's our right as human beings if we're going to be accused of something, to be judged by our peers. And, that's another thing that's really interesting. We've talked about this on the show. I've heard you talk about it. You and I have discussed it before. What is your peer? I mean, today, the peer is whoever the state says it is. They can haul someone in from Washington, D.C. They can haul someone in from wherever and say, well, you're being judged by your peers. And we look at people
your neighbor, your worker, the people you're around, surrounding the community. Henry. That's your peers, not a government employee.
That's right. One of my heroes, Patrick Henry. He specifically told us what our peers were. It's your neighbor. It's your good friend. It's the guy that you sit around with after work and drink a beer or eat dinner or whatever. These are the people originally that were seen as your peers, people that absolutely knew you inside and out. Because who is better to judge what your intent is and whether you're evil and whether you need to be punished than the people that are sitting next to you every day.
The people who are affected by your deeds. Isn't that one of the chief complaints in the Declaration of Independence? That they were hauling people off to foreign courts?
They were taking them to Nova Scotia because in the colonies, no one could get a conviction. In Massachusetts, when they were coming down on the Bostonians, this is back when Bostonians were free. When Bostonians stood up for their freedom.
You mean before they cowered in their houses when the police came by and said, stay in your house if you want to live?
The British didn't go walking around with their guns freely back then because they ran back to the ships. Anyways, so back then, you couldn't convict one Bostonian. No one. The shipping laws, the trade laws and all those things, you couldn't get convicted. When guys were smuggling items into America, and the British government would attack them and seize their ships and then take them to trial, and the juries would say, nah, not guilty, because they knew these laws were incorrect and wrong. They were unethical. They were immoral. So the British government started hauling them off to Nova Scotia, and they got tried under a British government court. Yeah. And so that was one of the complaints that Jefferson and the people that wrote the Declaration of Independence, he has taken us to foreign jurisdictions. And what did they do here, Frank? We see it when, even though I don't like the guy, Ted Stevens, didn't he get hauled off to Washington, D.C. to be tried?
And he should have been tried here in Alaska.
Exactly.
Anywhere in Alaska.
Didn't Schaefer Cox and those guys, where did they get? They didn't get drug. They got drug off to Anchorage.
Should have been tried right here in
foreign jurisdiction. The same things that we fought for independence are happening all over again.
Yeah, you mentioned the Bill of Rights, and I know George Mason was a founder of the Bill of Rights. In fact, a lot of people don't know that Bill of Rights come from the English Bill of Rights. But when I came here, the first thing I noticed, I went to City Hall, the Borough Building, North Pole. There was no Bill of Rights posted. And so I thought, wow. So there is today. I posted the Bill of Rights, and then all of a sudden, a number of years ago, I said, where's the 10 Commandments? So I posted the 10 Commandments. In fact, there's still one when you go in the Borough Building. I didn't ask for the plaque. Donated by Frank Turney, and had the 10 Commandments. Then I put one in the City Hall, the North Pole, and of course the ACLU wrote a letter threatening to take it down. So I was glad at that time all three mayors refused to do it. And so they're still there today. So I think one person can make a difference, and I think there's more people out there. I think anybody could see that our freedoms are lost today more than ever, in jeopardy more than ever.
Yeah, tell us what you think about the National Defense Authorization Act, specifically sections 1021 and 1022. What a threat.
Right.
What a threat to our liberty.
And those are the sections that basically say that the proverbial they, people in the state, whether it's military, FBI, or even a local law enforcement officer, can go and pick up anyone they want to without a charge, without a warrant, without having to answer to anybody else. They can just go and abduct someone off the street and put them anywhere they want to, basically without having to check them. And nobody has to know where you are.
One thing I disagree with Senator Coghill. In fact, I don't know how many hundreds of emails he received, and I testified myself and Lynette Clark and about 4 other people. He took the enforcement part out. You know, the federals come in here, no jail time, not rearrested, no fine. And they took it out of the House, put it in, they took it out. The only thing he did is they wouldn't fund the resources to implement. Well, that doesn't tell me anything. The feds can come in here and implement their own rules.
Yeah, we went around and around about that. I mean, there's no teeth to it. Come on. Right. Why do we have a state government who's supposed to protect their people? Let's just save the state a bunch of money and just get rid of them all. If they're just going to rubber stamp whatever the feds do, why do we need them?
That's why I hate the state.
That's right. I do too, Frank.
I'm getting a learning experience here. That's one thing about Patriots Lament. You guys bring up issues I never heard of, and they make good sense. But one thing I'm still struggling with is the right to vote. You know, I lost my right to vote for 5 or 6 years because I was framed for jury tampering for giving out that, not infamous number, that famous number, 1-800-TELL-JURY. That was the main indictment of mine. In fact, one of the grand juries asked the prosecutor, said, just what are our rights, Mr. Dugan? He said, all those rights were years ago. He failed to tell him that 4 states, Oregon, Maryland, Georgia, and Indiana, plus 2,600 states of free speech, recognize jury nullification. So I think that's why it's important. I hope that Cogdill's bill is introduced, that he gets support from the House and the Senate, and follow New Hampshire.
Yeah.
New Hampshire's setting president. Isn't that the live and die state?
That's right.
Frank, have you had your voting rights restored?
Pardon?
Have you had your voting rights restored?
Yes, I did. I got my voting rights restored to run for office, and so that's why I have been running for office. I got my gun rights. I can have everything. I can't have a firearm. I can have a rifle.
One of the chief complaints that I hear lobbied against myself and other people who chose not to vote in the last election is that somehow we are deteriorating the democratic process if we don't go out and participate. And they see, and the question that I ask back to them is, well, what if you don't have the right to vote? Are you then not being adequately represented? If you are not allowed to participate in the process, do you have to follow any of the rules?
Right.
Because, you know, if the whole issue of my participation in this system is what makes it so glorious, and that if I don't participate, somehow I'm causing it to fall, well, what about all the people whose rights have been taken away? What about all the people who never had the right? Like the women didn't have the right to vote until this century.
Yeah.
Blacks didn't have the right to vote until the late 1800s.
Well, and voting per se is not bad. I mean, if you sit around and you say, hey, let's take a vote, where are we going to go eat? There's nothing wrong with that. Or this, or as long as it's a voluntary thing, and voting is voluntary, then it's okay. What my personal disagreement with voting here for state election and stuff is that we live in an involuntary society. This government is foisted on us. It's forced on us. That's where I don't agree with it. Because when you're voting in this particular society with this particular government, you're voting, I want this gun pointed over there. And I want this gun pointed at him. Yeah. It's all pointing the guns away from someone else. Voting in as of itself is not wrong.
I agree with you. When it comes to the ballot box, that's the lowest. I think probably the highest is the grand jury's vote and trial by jury vote. That's more important than putting somebody in office. That's for sure.
An important vote right
and
there.
That's where,
and that's the one we shirk.
And that's the one everybody is shirking. I mean, you want to come after me for not voting? Well, how about, when's the last time you served?
I would like to spit this out. I met a lot of people that claim to be for liberty and freedom for Ron Paul. In fact, that's the reason why I went Republican to vote for Ron Paul down there. But when I question, I'm on my Facebook, it's just right now, I question those people down there. I haven't got an answer regarding that oath. And Joe Miller and I have been around and around about this. He supports that oath that he gives to jurors, that they have to follow his instructions, and they can't judge the law as well as the facts. Well, a lot of people take that oath serious. Well, it's not binding. It's an illegal vote. It's wrong. But I think many of these people just don't do the homework and research. And, they tell me, well, what are you going to do, get Begich or Murkowski? Well, I don't care for neither one of them. You know, if we had a real liberty, freedom candidate, I could understand, but we don't today. No. Not at all. No. And these people just don't understand. I hope some of them come out of the closet and recognize that Joe Miller's not for the people. I watched him when he was a federal magistrate. I watched him in Tok. He never did anything for the little people. Not whatsoever. So that's just my political opinion.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
We got about 10 minutes left, and we had a couple of phone calls coming in. Did you want to go to the phones at all today?
You want to take some calls, Frank?
Yeah, fine.
All right, I'm not sure if anybody's still on hold. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Hi, this is Tim.
Tim, wow, you've been on hold a long time.
Yes, I have. You guys just fill the airwaves with auditory noise, don't you? Well, anyway, short and sweet. I had some runarounds and whatnot with some lawyers, and basically it was about whether you in a position as a jury can judge the law. And they go, and their particular phrase for it is that you're not allowed to be a super jurist. In other words, you cannot, you're not allowed to or supposed to do your due diligence and duty as a member of a jury and actually look at and judge the law to determine whether it is morally right even. So that's just, my 2 cents to put into the discussion you guys are having.
Yeah, and it's absolutely completely backwards. For what Frank and I and Steve are talking about today, we have historical precedent. We have liberty and historical precedent on our side. Well, what these people are talking about are just what they want to have happen. They want power.
They've got the Lawyers Association,
and
the Alaska Bar,
Oh, you mean British affiliation?
Yeah, those people.
Thanks for the call, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. 458.
That's what BAR stands for.
458 Talk. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Hello?
Hey, hello.
This is the IRS. Who the hell is this?
All right, IRS, what's on your mind?
I want to challenge what was not said about the Himes case, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay, there were 8 people, maybe, at the house showing, and there should have been hundreds. And at the courthouse, there was maybe a dozen, and there should have been hundreds, and there should have been hundreds a long time ago. These people got punched in the face 99 times, and the fact that they didn't get punched in the face for the 100th time, I mean, it's not a victory, and it's just really depressing. And the thing about Marie standing up, I have a very different interpretation of that. I thought it was just a completely amateur move. I used to work as a bouncer at Bush 1 in Anchorage back in the late 80s, and I had someone who was coming up on me the wrong way, saying the wrong things, and he had a real friend in that rough bar, and he tackled his buddy, and he put him over his shoulder, and he carried him out the freaking door, because you don't pick a fight with a bouncer in his own club. The thing is, she was threatening the feds, and I'm all for courage, and I want to fight, and I've done hand-to-hand combat with cops, but I have a completely different interpretation with this. She was saying, you do something to somebody, someone's going to do something back to you, and I saw that the federal cop chick was also losing her temper. She was getting out of control, too, and I moved into the cluster, and I got right to the left shoulder of this girl, and I was getting ready to cut in front of her to help her. Friends don't let friends shoot themselves in the foot, and I think there should be a little book written, Fighting the System for Dummies, published by Patriots Lament. Thank you for listening.
I like that. Fighting the System for Dummies. That's a great idea. Maybe we can get Frank to help us write that. 458 Talk is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Oh, would that be me?
It might be. Depends on who it is.
Oh, this is Dave. I'm a neighbor. Anyway, I wanted to bring some valuable information and share it with you guys. It's called a Notice of Understanding and Intent and Claim of Right. And it reads that your name and then of your family here in present you with a notice of understanding and intent. I'm sending this letter out of courtesy in order. Let me get my glasses on. In order to avoid confusion or potential conflict, I am now expanding the reach of my discourse in order to maintain honor and ensure maximum clarity between myself and all agents of the government. After receiving this letter, please expect a notice of understanding and claim of right. In order to ensure maximum clarity amongst all parties, as a peaceful woman desiring to avoid conflict and live lawfully with maximum freedom, I have been studying the history of the United States, along with its legal system, and have come to some very interesting conclusions. After reading various acts and exploring the way of language is used in those acts. Do you have any information on that?
Where did you get that notice?
Boy, I'll tell you, I was over at the recycling center, and I opened up a vanilla envelope, and this was in there, and it goes on to say that I'd like for Frank to come by and get a copy of this. I left a message on his phone.
Well, let me
get a copy of this.
Let me tell you this. I'll give you my post office box number. You got a pencil?
Yeah. Is there any way we could meet for coffee, and probably I could give you this?
Well, yeah, I'm downtown every morning down there at the Co-op Coffee Shop. Just come in there. I'm there at 7 o'clock sharp, 7:30, something like that.
All right, thanks for the call. We're going to move on and see if we can squeeze in at least one more here. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. It's hard to know when you're on. When I was chosen to be on a grand jury not too long ago, and I'm sorry to say I didn't know what a grand jury was till I was asked to, ordered to be on it. And then I discovered, okay, we're supposed to review cases to come up, all right, and it came through, and we were just, okay, he's guilty, okay. And then I got excused for one day for some dental work. When I came back, everything had changed. And I said, what's going on here? Before we'd have a case, we look at it, it says, here's the evidence, so, okay, process it on. He said, those gals over there, they got angry because the assistant attorney was brusque with them. And so they went home and they found out what our rights are. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we're not supposed to be rubber stamping this stuff,
Right.
And so it turned into be, we were just supposed to be acknowledging and nodding our heads to, the old 12 Angry Men thing.
Nice.
I didn't know we had the power to call witnesses. And here's the weird thing. Okay, when they got angry...
excuse me, you have a lot of power as a grand jury. You have more power than that district attorney. You notice it's one-sided in there. You have a lot of power.
Here's the thing, Frank. They didn't want us to know. And I didn't know that, once they started speaking, everything changed. I mean, these ladies, hell hath no fury, man. Okay? And they found out what the rights were. And then I started saying with myself, I should have learned this in school.
One of the problems is you grand juries pick that form of the grand jury, and many times you pick somebody that works for the government. The same people that's going to rubber stamp and never question authority.
Right. Well,
listen, you can go to the Fully Informed Jury Association, just plug in grand jury, and you'll find out about your real rights and responsibilities are versus rubber stamping.
Well, here's my point. When I was called up, that first session, the judge tells you when you're supposed to go, and does anybody need to be excused, whatever. Why, knowing that most of us are kind of ignorant about the purpose of a grand jury until we're told to go on one, why don't we get a little pamphlet telling what our rights and responsibilities are? And I asked, I said, why? And here's another thing. When those ladies got upset, the nature of the attorneys and everything totally changed. They totally went subservient. Oh, yeah, you want to review that witness? Because, man, it was no longer rubber stamp. We bumped one thing that was an outrageous attack from like assault to or something, first-degree murder. And we threw one case out that would have hurt this guy for the rest of his life because of a technicality. I mean, the case was absurd. And it was the ladies who were actually, I have to say, that were waking everybody up that day.
One thing that's important, a district attorney cannot be in that room when you decide whether to indict or not indict. So a lot of times, many grand jurors not even aware that he's not supposed to be in that room when you render that verdict.
Here's the thing. Once they knew, I'm talking about everybody from the court clerk to once they knew that we were awake, suddenly they'll change. Boy, if we asked to be able to review a witness, they did it. There was no more resistance or any behavior like that. they backed off.
We live in a little town where nepotism is you got jury clerks are married to sheriffs and judges married to district attorneys. It just goes on and on here in the 4th Judicial District. So
I love this dirty little river town.
My bottom line is they should give us the information because a lot of us are ignorant. I'm not long ignorant. I know what the purpose of a grand jury is.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Well, that goes back to what we were talking about way earlier today about the Supreme Court case in, what was it,
1895, Sparks versus Hansen.
That when the Supreme Court said they shouldn't have to be told, the idea is that the jury, the people, it's like the same thing. You shouldn't have to be told that you have the right to free speech. You shouldn't have to be told that you have the right to keep and bear arms. But the problem is people have been told that you do not have that right. People have been taught, they've been inculcated through a public school system that is designed to keep those in power in power.
That's why I hate the state.
Exactly. And they should have told us that your purpose is a stopgap between that kind of power. Exactly. And that's the purpose of a grand jury.
Yep.
Step in and say, wait a minute, this the investigators and everybody else is getting either going too far or they weren't going far enough.
I hate to repeat myself, but just if you got the internet connections, go to that Fully Informed Jury Association. You'll find out about the jury and grand jury.
All right, that takes us to the end of the program today. Josh, what's our contact information here for Patriots Lament?
PatriotsLament@gmail.com. Our blog is PatriotsLament@blogspot.com. And Frank, do you want to give your number out or not?
Oh, yeah, 457-2333. You can leave a message, 457-2333. I won't give my cell because I hardly ever hear it.
1-800-TELL-JURY.
All right, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Frank.
Auction is next.
KFAR, Fairbanks, 660 AM. Online.